If someone asked you to describe Damon Salvatore using only one word, what would it be? Monster? Villain? Murderer? Or brother? The truth is, Damon Salvatore is one of the most complicated characters television has ever created. When we first met him, there was nothing heroic about him. He wasn't misunderstood. He wasn't secretly kind. He wasn't waiting for someone to save him. He was cruel. He killed without hesitation, manipulated people for his own amusement, destroyed lives simply because he could. If Damon wanted something, he took it. If someone stood in his way, they disappeared. He wasn't the kind of man you rooted for. He was the kind of man you hoped would lose. And yet, by the end of the Vampire Diaries, millions of fans weren't celebrating his downfall. They were celebrating his happiness. Some even called him the greatest character in the entire series. So what happened? Did Damon really become a better man? Or did we simply begin to see him differently? Because here's the strange thing. The Damon Salvatore we met in the first season wasn't pretending to be a monster. He genuinely believed that was all he could ever be. After more than a century of disappointment, betrayal, loss, and loneliness, hope had become something he no longer recognized. Imagine spending over 140 years believing that the love of your life had been taken from you. Imagine living every single day with nothing except anger to keep you moving. Eventually, that anger stops becoming an emotion. It becomes your identity. And that's exactly what happened to Damon. Long before Mystic Falls, long before Elena Gilbert, long before any of us knew his name, there was simply a young man who loved too deeply. A young man desperate for approval, desperate to be enough. Especially for one person, his older brother, Stefan. People often remember Damon and Stefan as rivals, enemies, brothers constantly at war. But that's only half the story, because before resentment, before betrayal, there was love, a complicated kind of love, the kind that only brothers understand. Damon spent years believing that nothing he ever did was enough. Not for his father, not for Catherine, sometimes not even for Stefan. Every rejection became another stone added to the wall surrounding his heart. And eventually, that wall became stronger than the man trapped inside it. That's why Damon smiled while doing terrible things. Not because he enjoyed every moment, but because if everyone already believed he was the villain, why fight it? Why try to become someone better when the world had already decided who you were? It was easier to embrace the darkness than risk believing in the light. So, he became exactly what everyone expected, a monster. But here's what makes Damon Salvatore different from so many other villains. Every now and then, the mask slipped, just for a second, a glance, a hesitation, a look of regret that disappeared before anyone could notice it. Those tiny moments mattered, because beneath all the sarcasm, all the violence, all the cruelty, there was still a man quietly asking the same question he'd been asking for over a century. Is there anything left worth saving? At first, none of us noticed. We were too busy watching the villain. But perhaps, without realizing it, that was the exact moment we began to forgive him.
The first time we watched Damon Salvatore, we saw the blood, the violence, the chaos. What we didn't see was the loneliness hiding behind all of it. The easiest thing to believe is that people wake up one day and choose to become monsters. But life is rarely that simple. Monsters are often created, one disappointment at a time. For Damon, it began with Catherine Pierce. She wasn't simply the woman he loved. She became the future he believed in, the reason he endured pain, the reason he accepted becoming a vampire, the reason he imagined eternity could actually mean something. And then, in a single moment, everything he believed collapsed. For over a century, Damon convinced himself that finding Catherine would finally heal the emptiness inside him. But when that dream finally became reality, he discovered something far worse than losing her. He discovered that the version of Catherine he had loved never truly existed. She manipulated him. She chose herself. She always would. That realization didn't just break Damon's heart. It shattered the identity he had built around her. Imagine spending 145 years chasing a dream, only to realize it was never real. Most people would have fallen apart. Damon simply laughed. covered the pain with another joke, another sarcastic comment, another cruel decision, because pretending not to care hurts less than admitting you do. But Catherine wasn't the only ghost haunting him. There was Stefan. No matter how much Damon denied it, his brother's opinion always mattered, perhaps more than anyone else's. He wanted Stefan to understand him, to choose him, to stand beside him. Instead, their relationship became another battlefield. Every argument, every betrayal, every painful decision only pushed them further apart. And yet, whenever Stefan was truly in danger, Damon came back, again, and again, and again, because hatred is easy. Indifference is impossible when you still love someone. That was the contradiction Damon could never escape. He wanted everyone to believe he cared about nothing, yet he constantly sacrificed pieces of himself for the people he claimed not to need. He protected Stefan. He protected Elena. He protected Bonnie. He even protected people he hated. Not because he suddenly became a hero, but because somewhere beneath all the anger, the man Damon used to be refused to disappear completely. That's what made his journey so compelling. His redemption wasn't a straight line. He failed, repeatedly. Sometimes he made the same mistakes over and over again. Sometimes he chose violence when compassion would have been stronger. Sometimes he let his emotions destroy everything he had built. Real change isn't perfect. It's messy, painful, slow, and Damon never stopped struggling with the darkness inside him. Perhaps that's why his story felt believable, because redemption isn't measured by never falling again. It's measured by whether you choose to stand back up. Every time Damon failed, he had another opportunity to return to the monster we met in Season 1. Sometimes he did, but more often, he fought against it, not because someone forced him to, because, for the first time in over a century, he wanted to become someone he could live with. And without realizing it, that fight became something we couldn't stop watching. Because somewhere between the villain we hated and the man struggling to change, we stopped asking, will Damon ever become good? And started asking something far more important. Can someone who has done terrible things ever truly forgive themselves?
And maybe that's the reason Damon Salvatore's story has never really been about redemption. It's been about hope. Because every time Damon took one step forward, life pushed him 2 steps back. He lost people. He made mistakes. He watched those he loved suffer because of his choices. And every single time, the easiest path would have been to stop trying, to become the monster everyone already believed he was. There were moments when he almost did, moments when grief consumed him, moments when rage spoke louder than reason, moments when the old Damon returned. Those moments are important, because if Damon had transformed into a perfect hero overnight, his story would have been unbelievable. Real people don't change that way. Real change happens slowly, one choice at a time, one sacrifice at a time, one moment of self-control, replacing another moment of violence. Perhaps that's why audiences connected with him, not because he was good, but because he kept fighting against the worst version of himself. And isn't that something every one of us understands? None of us are perfect. All of us carry regrets, mistakes, versions of ourselves we'd rather leave behind. When we watched Damon struggle, we weren't just watching a vampire. We were watching something deeply human. The fear that maybe we've gone too far. The hope that maybe we haven't. And then there was Elena. Many people believe Elena changed Damon. I don't think that's entirely true. Elena didn't create the good inside him. She simply became the first person who refused to believe the monster was all that existed. She challenged him, questioned him, disappointed him, believed in him, not because he had earned it, but because she saw possibilities he couldn't see in himself. The difference is important. Love didn't magically erase Damon's darkness. It gave him a reason to fight it. And there's a huge difference between becoming good for someone else and choosing to become better because you finally believe you can. That's the Damon who stayed with us, not the vampire, not the killer, not the sarcastic one-liners. The man trying, often failing, but refusing to stop trying, which brings us back to the question we started with. Why did we forgive Damon Salvatore? Maybe we never truly forgave the things he did. Maybe those actions should never be forgotten. But forgiveness was never the reason millions of people fell in love with his character. Empathy was. We understood his loneliness. We witnessed his pain. We saw the guilt he tried so desperately to hide. And over 8 seasons, we watched a man who believed he was beyond saving slowly discover that redemption isn't something another person gives you. It's something you choose every single day. Perhaps that's why Damon's ending feels so satisfying. Not because he became perfect. He didn't. Not because he deserved a happy ending more than anyone else. That's something every fan will debate forever. His ending matters because he finally became the man he had spent over a century pretending he could never be. A brother, a partner, a friend, a man who no longer needed to hide behind anger to survive. And maybe that's why, years after the Vampire Diaries came to an end, people still talk about Damon Salvatore. Not because he was television's greatest hero, not because he was its greatest villain, but because he reminded us that people are rarely one thing. We are all capable of kindness. We are all capable of cruelty. We all carry darkness. And we all have a choice about what we do with it. Perhaps Damon Salvatore didn't teach us that monsters can become heroes. Perhaps he taught us something far more important, that no matter how broken someone becomes, there's always another choice, another chance, another tomorrow. And maybe, just maybe, that's why we never stop believing in him.